But first, I want to talk about one lone piece of mail. And it's not a huge mail day. It cost me a whopping $13 shipped. And while I could just sit here and tell you about the card, what fun is that? I want to make a little guessing game out of it instead, just like I did on Twitter after I won it. So the clue I originally provided was short and to the point. On November 20th, I tweeted out, bought a fuzzy card on eBay tonight. So for those of you playing along at home, start thinking about what you think that could be. And the first guest I received on Twitter was a 1997-98 Skybox Z-Forced Fast Track. If you've never seen one of those before, they're bright yellow cards, and then there's a fuzzy material on the front, kind of like a felt-like material that spells out the words Fast Track. And a couple people guessed that one, actually. And while it was a good guess, it was not correct. And similarly, someone guessed the 1997-98 Fleer Ultra Ultrability Superstar set that has that same style of felt texture on the word Superstar. And if you haven't seen one of those, make sure to head over to Jake Roy, aka 90s B-Ball Cards Instagram. I know at some point he posted his Penny Hardaway. Maybe it's buried. Maybe he'll bring that back this week so you can see it. Jake, if you're listening, try and do that for us. That was another great guess, but still not correct. And sticking with this felt texture theme for a moment here, I was a little disappointed that no one guessed the 2012-2013 past and present headband set. That's one that's kind of different. It's got a big headshot of the player, and then the headband itself is textured. There was another past and present set too that they could have guessed, which was the Winning Touch banner set. Now, I actually like both of those quite a bit. It's too bad they didn't put any Pacers in them. And before someone says, well, the Pacers didn't win any NBA titles, they have ABA banners. They can put that on there. But even if someone had guessed one of those, they would have been incorrect. Switching gears a little bit, a couple people linked the word fuzzy to a relic, which fits a lot of my PC. Someone guessed one of the holiday sweater cards that Panini used in some of their Hoops releases over the last few years. And yes, even though I do rag on Hoops, truth be told, I do have one of those. I've got a Goga Batase, and that's from 2019, from the last year that they were actually player worn. That wasn't a horrible guess. I'm not entirely opposed to owning one of those, but I'm still not correct. Someone else then guessed a Woolly Mammoth relic card, and before you say, what on earth is that? Stuff like that does exist. And it sounds like something that might be in Goodwin Champions or Allen and Genter. I do own relics from those sets. But no Woolly Mammoth relics, and then nothing that came in the mail this past week was from those sets. So are you stumped yet? Right? I think you probably would be. I know I would be. This is not a normal card here. A couple guesses got really close. And while the other guesses all dealt with different textures, these next two guesses decided to focus on athletes that were named Fuzzy instead. And the first person asked if it was Fuzzy Thurston of the Green Bay Packers. I have to confess, I had to look that one up. I don't know, 1960s football all that well. So no, it was not Fuzzy Thurston. The closest guest, however, featured the right player, but the wrong card. So shout out to Rich McKee on Twitter, who guessed the 1948 Bowman of Andrew Fuzzy Levain. And now, if you don't know Fuzzy Levain, first off, I didn't know a lot about him either. But Fuzzy was a bit of a New York basketball legend. He was player of the year there in 1943 when he played for St. John's. He then played in the NBL, which came before the NBA, then played a year in the NBA as well. And his greatest contributions to the game likely occurred in his 4+ decades as a scout for the New York Knicks. I know if you're thinking, a little more modern players, even though this is dated now, I think he discovered Anthony Mason, right, which was a big part of those 90s Knicks teams. And then in between his time as a player and scout, though, he spent a little time coaching as well. And that segues us, finally, I know, that segues us to the grand reveal. I got a 1961 Essex Meats card that features Fuzzy as the coach of the St. Louis Hawks. You guys know I love my coach cards. And I have searched high and low for more information on these Essex Meats cards. If you have any info about them, by the way, please let me know. I know it was a one-off regional set. My guess is that it's kind of like the Cons Wieners cards that were packaged with hot dogs in the Cincinnati area. Usually featured Cincinnati teams or guys like Jerry West that went to college in the area, like West Virginia, right? Now, although those Cons cards seem a lot more rare than these Essex cards, but I still can't find any record of an Essex Meats company. The only thing I found was a small town about 2.5 hours from St. Louis called Essex, but the population's only like 400 people. Now, as for the set itself, the checklist has 14 cards, but one of them, Cy Green, is practically impossible to find. No one knows if it was a production error, a late emission, or something else. So that whole set, there's a lot of mystery about it. And speaking of Cy Green, as a quick aside here, the Celtics moved up to select him at number 2 in the 1956 draft because they were absolutely certain the Rochester Royals would pick a gentleman named Bill Russell at number 1. Rochester, though, didn't want to wait for him to return from the Olympics in Australia, so the rest is history. And Cy went to Rochester instead. So anyway, Cy Green's 1961 Essex Meats card pretty much never shows up. There is one total copy in PSA's Pop Report of any grade. So if you've got the other 13 cards in the set, everyone pretty much considers that to be a complete set. Anyway, I hope that was a little more entertaining for you than a normal mail segment. My goal was not only to reveal my new card, but also to educate you on a couple other sets real quick in the process. I will say this, though. If you guessed that card, if you guessed Fuzzy Levain, you deserve some kind of special made-up reward. Or at least give yourself a pat on the back.